Today, we're doing an anti-PSA. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Considered good literature? Considered romantic? Considered a love for the ages? No. So, I have this little series on my channel that's called PSA, Personal Service Announcement. Read this book. Well, today this is a PSA, don't read this book, or PSA, WTF, why is this taught in schools? Why is this considered so interesting? What the actual hell? I read this book in September with my friend Becca from Becca's Book Club. She needed to pick a book to read for class, and she picked this one. And I, knowing that I really disliked it as a child, I listened to it on audio before audio was cool, back in like 7th, 8th grade or whatever. And I was like, you know, I've wanted to read more classes this year, and this isn't that long. I'll read it with Becca. It'll be fine. And it wasn't very long into the story, maybe 20, 30, 50 pages or so, when normally I would DNF a book if I wasn't enjoying it. But I realized that I really was hate reading this story. And the more I looked up people's reviews, and the more I listened to people expound about the depth of character and the lengths people would go to for revenge, the more I realized, what the f***? Why do you consider this good literature? If this book was written today, it would be such trash. Like, it would get such a hard time. It'd be considered the Colleen Hoover that gets crap, or just so many things. This would be considered abusive and manipulative, and we would cancel the person who wrote it. Maybe not cancel. I don't believe in canceling. Don't cancel anybody. Don't cancel me. This is my opinion. I'm making this video all in good fun. If you haven't noticed, I'm using my sarcastic voice, and some people asked me to make it. So just remember that before you spew your hate down there. I'm going to get a little salty. Things are going to get a little weird. But just deal with it or move along. Go watch someone else's review where they say nice things. This is going to be 5 reasons why I hate Wuthering Heights. Now I'm going to put that down because I don't even want to touch it. I'm done. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about reasons why I hated it. I'm going to try to be quick because I don't want to devote this much time to this book. All right, first off, there is child abuse in this book. The setup of this story, you have the Lintons. There are 2 of them, and they have a father. And their father, he goes on a trip, and he comes back with a little boy, and they name him Heathcliff. And he doesn't have a last name, and he's this little urchin, and everybody's horrible to him. Everyone's horrible to him, except the father. The father, I will say, is probably the, only good person in this story. We'll just say that. And not even perfectly good, but enough that, he would bring a kid home and want him to have a good life. But does he have a good life? Not really. The father likes him better, and there just becomes this big pile of hate where the older brother, he is jealous that his father likes this young boy. He's horrible to him. Heathcliff, not great back. Not humble or pleased that he was adopted by this wealthier family. No, he takes advantage of it. He rebels against it. Him and the brother, sorry, I don't even remember people's names. Guess what? There's a genealogy. Hindley, the brother, him and Heathcliff both get a horse. And Heathcliff's horse gets hurt or something like that. And so he demands Hindley's horse. And he knows, he basically manipulates Hindley into getting the horse because otherwise he's going to tell the father that Hindley did something to his horse and he would get it from him anyway. Horrible people. Kathy and Heathcliff, they are young children together. They run around the moors. They have this weird relationship where she tries to be nice to him, but he doesn't like nice. He spurns it, and so he teases her, but he's really in love with her, and it's that, the relationship is just effing ridiculous. These characters, So the child abuse, that's what we're talking about here. When the father dies, because, spoiler alert, there's a genealogy in the front, and everyone's dead, okay? They literally tell you when people die and who dies, and that it's everybody. Everybody dies, okay? Ugh. And he dies, and so Hindley is left in charge of these two children. They're still pretty young. And he is abusive to them. He locks them up. He treats Heathcliff badly. He makes Heathcliff kind of act like a servant. It's a little bit like a Cinderella situation. He's horrible to them. Absolutely horrible. And so there becomes this like even bigger rift between Cathy and Heathcliff, and it's ridiculous. It's crazy. And so there's straight up child abuse. He's so cruel to these children. But that's not even the worst thing. That's not the worst thing. We're later on in time. Let's fast forward 10 years or so. Hindley is married. He has a young son. His name is Hareton. Now, Hareton is a sweet, beautiful little boy at this point. It's a very nice little boy. And Heathcliff has been away, and he's come back, and he's trying to, I don't even know, get revenge, maybe? That's probably his point. It's really hard to tell the motives of these people. And I looked up the Spark Notes after I read each chapter because this was crazy. And there's a situation where Hindley is angry because he goes into these rages, and he throws his child off, not the balcony, but like the top of the stairs. He throws his kid over the railing. And Heathcliff, upon reflex, catches Hareton. And then he looks down and realizes that he saved his enemy's child, and he puts him down, and he wishes that he hadn't caught him. So not only did poor Hareton's father throw him off a balcony and didn't know Heathcliff was down there, but number two, Heathcliff wouldn't have caught him if he knew who he was. So that child could have died or been seriously injured, and none of the adults cared. None of the adults cared. I was so angry at that point. I was furious because I never heard about that, and I didn't remember that this happened. I mean, I listened to this when I was so young that I didn't remember that happening. And I'm like, how is this expounded as good literature? It's child abuse. And it's not even like there's more of a purpose to it. This child is just an object in their games. And it's ridiculous. And then we get into there's no order to this. I said there's 5 reasons. Just pick it out of what I say because I can't keep it straight. I'm so angry. I knew this would happen. Talking about it just makes me so mad. Because it all comes back to the characters. They're horrible. But let's talk about how this story is being told. We have this character who gets stuck in town, basically. And he ends up having to spend the night at Wuthering Heights because I think he gets sick. Heathcliff is the one in charge at Wuthering Heights at this point. Because everyone else is dead. And he's the only one left. Except for Hareton and Linton has died, a child. Like, there's so much. I'm sorry. You know what I'm talking about. If you don't, whatever. And Catherine Jr., because the Catherine that Heathcliff loved, she died, and she haunts the moors. And we have a situation of this character who is staying at Wuthering Heights. Cathy's ghost haunts him, and she actually, attacks him and is corporeal. So there's a little bit of a fantastical element too. And so Heathcliff comes in and he shoos him out of the room, and he's like, this ghost just attacked me. And he's like, whatever, there's no ghost. And he sends him out of the room, and Heathcliff runs to the window and says, Cathy, come back. Please haunt me. Please don't leave. And so he wants her ghost to haunt him, which is, I think, where everyone thinks this is romantic, that she basically died from childbirth. And they never got to be together, even though they had the opportunity to be married. But Cathy was too much of a bitch, and she married somebody else. And then immediately, wished she was with Heathcliff, but yet she's with the guy she's with, who is Edgar, I think his name is. And they have this abusive relationship where, she hits him and freaks out at him, and then he wants to be with her even more. And they just are, really abusive to each other. And then Heathcliff marries Edgar's sister, Isabella, so that like to just mess everything up. And he basically tricks Isabella into marrying him, and then they have a baby, and then she dies soon after that happens. And it's just this twisted cycle of people hating each other and marrying the people they don't want to marry, and then wishing they were with someone else, and then just hating each other. And there is no point to the book. Like, this story is getting relayed to Mr. Earnshaw. There we go. Sorry. Mr. Earnshaw is getting told this story by someone who was the housekeeper and nanny throughout these people's lives. And she now lives at a house across the way that used to belong to Catherine and her husband. And she's telling this story to Earnshaw, which she apparently has kind of been trapped here too, because there's no place for her to go. So she just keeps getting passed between the houses and has seen all this unravel. And I don't know like why, but she's spilling all these stories to Mr. Earnshaw, and it's just ridiculous. It's a hateful story. There's no closure at the end of it. Everybody's dead. And now you're supposed to believe that like Heathcliff and Kathy are finally ghosts together on the moors, and that's a happy ending. That they were such effed up people, they couldn't just try to be together. They never could have been together. Like, even if by some miracle they would have just wed each other like they should have, not only would it not have worked because they're too hateful of people, they probably would have burned the place down, is my opinion. And so I just don't understand why we espouse this. I've heard it said, oh, it's a revenge story. Heathcliff's trying to get revenge on these people. And it's like, why? Like, why? Because, you know, if he had come in and not been so superior as a street urchin who was adopted by a rich family, and not that he has to grovel at their feet, but he could have tried to like be loved by the people, instead of the first time he met any resistance, it was fight, fight, fight. I hate you. I'm going to make it my life's work to get revenge on you. I just don't get it. I don't get the purpose of the story. There's no redemption for anyone at the end. There's no like driving force to make me care about them. I don't care about any of these people. They're just hateful. They're horrible. They're abusive to children. They're horrible to the spouses that they end up with. They ruin the lives of this family, the brother and the sister that both Kathy and Heathcliff marry. They ruin their lives by bringing this toxic relationship to them. And it's just disgusting. It's disturbing. And I don't understand why this is taught to our children as like literature that you should like study and learn from. I don't understand. And here's the thing that it all comes back to. I don't blame the author. I don't blame Emily Bronte for this, because if you look into the lives of the Bronte sisters, they had a really tough life. You look at the stories they wrote, none of them are very happy. I mean, Jane Eyre has a good ending, but her life sucked. And there's a lot of autobiographical story put into their writings. And the thing for me is that the lives they lived, I can understand them writing stories with this level of pain and anguish. And I can even see it being fascinating to the people at the time reading it. What I don't understand and what I don't condone, and why I'm making this video, is I don't understand what people take from it now. Because we're not in control of, you know, if I were to write a book today, I'm not in control of what people think of it 200 years from now, right? Literally, things I've heard said is that this was basically just like a diary, but with like a spouse. Like they were just writing these stories. And then it was like, hey, each of us wrote a story, and they all published them under the same name. And it was only later on that it was like split into, okay, these were actually written by 3 different sisters, Emily, Charlotte, and Anne. And, you know, you can't know that this story you wrote is going to be taught in schools later. Like that's, you know, really egotistical if you thought it would. So I don't blame her. And I mean, I can see why it would be fascinating. It reminds me of like a soap opera or like an episode of the Vampire Diaries where like everyone's just trying to get revenge on everybody else, but you can't even remember like what the original point of revenge is because everything's so overlapped that you don't know who did the first wrong or how we got here. And the most interesting reviews I've seen is when people actually talk about the revenge part of it and like, you know, if there was a way that it could have been stopped and like what was the point of no return and like where was the place where if someone had been a little more humble, they could have threw up their hands and were like, we're going down a path I don't want to be on. How do we change it? I can understand the literature from that point of view, but so many reviews I read, everyone's just like, oh, I just love it. I don't get it. I'm not here to judge you if this is your favorite book. Again, this is mostly all in good fun. I am genuinely confounded by it. I don't understand. And some of my friends asked me to make this video because I was very passionate about it. A group of my friends are reading the book in November of 2019. Who knows when you'll see this. And I'm interested to see how they feel about it. And there's plenty of people who think it's interesting, but I also think a lot of people give this a good rating because it's a classic and because they don't get it and because they feel like they need to perpetuate that every classic needs to be perfect. Well, I'm not one of those people. It's also not in my genre anyway. I want to read a book with a happy ending. I want to read a book where the characters have merit to them. And I don't know a single character in this book besides Mr. Earnshaw, who's just listening to the story, and the nanny or the housekeeper who had to live through it all, and Isabella. Isabella really had a tough go of it. And the children, guys. I hate this book. I never am going to read it again. I'm going to keep it for some lists. It's going to be fun. This may be my most hated book this year. We'll see. But it was a 2-star rating for me. And honestly, I just want to give it nothing, but I'm not that cruel of a woman. And yeah, it was, wow. So anyway, this has been my PSA, do not read this book, but more just a rant review of Wuthering Heights. Take it for what it is. I'd love to hear why you also hate it or why you love it. There will be no like disparagement from me. This is all in good fun. And thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos every Monday and Thursday, and you can see some more of them right now. Bye.